U.S. corporate profits hit a record high in the fourth quarter of 2021, even as GDP lowered. So what does this mean exactly? Well, it means inflation is good for big businesses, which upped their prices in response to supply and labor shortages and saw profit margins increase 25% to $2.94 trillion, the largest gain since 1976. And while we know gas prices are taking a toll on working people, 25 of the world's biggest fossil fuel corporations are reaping in record profits as well. Oil giant BP, for example, has hit its highest profits in 8 years.
The USDA predicted the cost of gas will continue to rise this year, and food as well. You could expect to spend another 4% on groceries by the end of this year, including meat, poultry, dairy, vegetables, and more. But despite this news, MSNBC is still confused as to why Americans are dissatisfied with this booming economy, in quotes.
Journalist David Sirota responded by saying it's almost as if the booming economy is great for billionaires but doesn't satisfy millions of people being crushed by Democrats' corporate donors who are fleecing the non-rich with ever higher prices for healthcare, housing, energy, and other necessities.
I wonder how David feels about this. He never makes it clear.
Leaving some vagueness there. But so 25% increase in profits. And we've talked about this a bunch on the show. These corporations were using the slight inflation that we did see in the beginning as an excuse to then jack up prices. So if you combine the supply chain problems with the energy price increases with the corporate greed, you've basically explained all of the inflation that we've experienced without having to then say, oh, well, the problem was actually the deficit or the problem was government spending or whatever it is. No, we found the culprit. That's my take anyway. What do you guys think?
There's a little bit of government spending probably in there too. There's a lot of government spending.
There was a lot of government spending. Big companies are just raking in the profits off of human suffering. That's what we've seen during this pandemic with even just the vaccines. All these vaccine makers, Big Pharma just raked in a ton of money. Why did that not go back to the American people? It was an emergency. It was kind of like wartime, right? That money should have gone back into the economy. They should have not have been allowed to make so much money off of that. And now we're seeing oil companies doing the same thing and other companies just saying, well, now's the time to rake in the profits off of human suffering. It's disgusting. There should be some controls on this. It's not going to be good for them in the end, because when you bankrupt everybody, when everyone in the middle class is poor and they're not able to buy things, it ultimately reels us down a path that doesn't look so great. It looks a lot like Venezuela. So I don't think this is being thought out that well, and maybe the government should step in. I don't know what Robby thinks of this, but I think the government should be stepping in and capping the amount of profits they're getting. I think Bernie Sanders even had this plan. I'm a big fan of it. Go in there, cap their profits, and put the rest back in the economy. It has to go back in.
Well, meanwhile, BlackRock President Rob Capdio has a different take on inflation. All you entitled people need to be taught a lesson. During a conference in Texas, Capito said, quote, "For the first time, this generation is going to go into a store, not be able to get what they want, and we have a very entitled generation that has never had to sacrifice." He went on to say, "I would put on your seatbelts because this is something that we haven't seen." I think this generation has sacrificed.
Wow.
I think there's been plenty of sacrificing. People who I graduated right around the time. Okay, look, yes, didn't have to serve in wars and all that kind of stuff. Sure, thank you to our elder generations.
Didn't have to, but a lot of people did.
Some people did. But yeah, if you graduated, after 2008 and just saw the job opportunities, the housing opportunities just crater. And then you have this debt that, again, I'm not for real. I don't think we should forgive student loan debts broadly. I think we should fix the system so that people don't take on that or even aren't able to take on that debt. But they were sold this fantasy that it was all worth it by con artists that, go into as much debt as you want, and take as long as you want to get your education, because then you're going to have this good job on the other end of it. That was just a lie. It was a scam and a con. And so don't say young people haven't sacrificed or haven't experienced loss or hardship. And then we've all experienced loss and hardship over the last 2 years. Everyone on planet Earth. Right. It's been miserable.
Right. Look, the pitchforks are coming, guys. So either they do something about this or the pitchforks are coming. People if they can't go to the grocery store and buy what they need, if they're seeing, like with this BlackRock executive is saying. I mean, if we walk into the stores and the shelves are empty and we're not in a pandemic anymore, and we can't commute where we need to commute because gas prices are too high, this is going to change fundamentally the way the people view the government, and it's not going to be good. And that is why I say Bernie, he came out, I just found it, he wants to hit large corporations with a 95% windfall tax. So if they ended up getting, you take the last 5 years, and if their profits have been enormous and compared to their last 5-year average, then you hit them with a 95% windfall tax. And then, of course, that money should be given right back into the economy. I mean, otherwise, I think the pitchforks are coming. And that was actually first said by an Amazon executive years ago.
And what I love about that kind of a 95% tax rate, and Robby will appreciate this, I'm sure, is that it's not about collecting the revenue. It's about encouraging better corporate behavior. And so back when you had the 90% tax rates during the Eisenhower era, it wasn't as if those 90% rates were bringing in a whole bunch of money. But what it did is it said to oligarchs, you can't really become an oligarch. And so, okay, yes, you could come up with some scheme with your buddies, get in some private equity, you could buy up Sears, you could bankrupt it, you could steal all the people's pensions, and then you could like rent out the carcass of the Sears while destroying like the legacy of this American company. You could do that, but you're not going to make much money off of it because we're going to tax 90% of it. And so a lot of these schemes that capital would have cooked up otherwise, we're like, you know what? We're not actually going to do that. And so as you saw that tax rate come down to 60, 50, 40, then down to 30s, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we could leverage Sears, buy it up, bankrupt it, steal the pension, and keep the money. Let's do that. And so these private equity firms, capital, they go out and do that. And so if you bring back that windfall profit tax, you'd have companies during the pandemic who are seeing a little bit of inflation saying, you know what, we can actually double our prices right now. But then somebody's going to be like, well, yeah, we could double our prices, but then we double our tax bill. So let's just leave our prices what they are because we're making a decent profit. And that's how you organize a better society, I think.
Otherwise, we're going to see what we saw in the summer of 2020 happening on a more regular basis. Boarded up stores, people looting, just mayhem. And that is what happens when people get desperate. So I think people need to wake up to this because if what they're predicting is accurate, it's coming. People will not tolerate not being able to go to the store and get food.
Right, and some of their responses will be far worse than what I'm talking about. Like, Robby, we're trying to save your free market. We're trying to save. We're going to the way that FDR saved capitalism for you guys.
Did
he?
Yeah.
Well,
and we get no thanks.
I'm so grateful for you. I know how much you care about the free market, so we gotta
We're here to save it from itself.
Well, you have to regulate it. It's like a good sports game. You just can't let somebody run totally amok on the field, right? There's got to be some regulation to this. You've got to. So, that's what free market capitalism needs to have, those regulation controls on it somehow in order to keep the game fair. That's it, Robby. That's all it is.
And we're getting into philosophical territory. Fine, it needs to have some regulation, but who's setting the regulation? Are they people who are captured by one of the teams or not? What are the interests of the bureaucrats who eventually determine whether they're following the rules? How accountable are they? Very little. Then eventually it's like, oh, it takes like 10 years to get a license to braid hair, to be a hair braider because there's a regulation that was written by the Hair Braiders Association that doesn't want any competition. Anyway, those are all my practical philosophical.
While the fight's going on, the crowd is going to pour onto the field and just beat all the players to death if we don't do something.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen in sports, I think. I'm not a big sports guy, but
doesn't happen much.
No regulation.
U.S. men's team made the World Cup. If you want some sports update on the show.
Hey, how about that? Yeah. And obviously, world champion golfer Donald Trump out there somewhere, hitting holes in one.
Holes in one all over the place.
We'll have more Rising right after this.